Good morning. Oh no, I just kind of felt like I need to get outside and go for a walk. And leave my puppy dog at home with Momo, of course. Momo's sticking close to my mom and them, so I am getting a little concerned for my mom. I've been concerned for her about everything and how things are going. Now, if this thing cuts, forgive me, it is raining, and the rain, if it hits the screen just right, it'll stop the record. So then I have to figure out wherever it cut and try to remember what I've said from there. I just feel like doing this vid in the sense of, before I continue to go and speak or talk about certain subject matters, in the future, I guess you could say, I want people to understand that I know I'm not, I hope people realize that I don't view myself as exactly my point with the rain. Here, let's see if I can angle it downwards. Sorry. But, so you're probably going to end up seeing more of my chin because I'm trying to keep the rain from hitting the screen. But I really don't view myself as anything close to perfect. No, honestly, I actually have a fairly low self-esteem, especially these days. I guess this vid's going to be kind of a bit of a confession thing so that people understand that where my background is and why I speak about some of the things that I have and I've experienced in life. I think people know more about some of the abuse and stuff like that I've dealt with in the past and especially the present. Sorry, this is going to be at a downward angle because of how the water is. Or, how the rain's falling. But I can go down. I'm gonna pretty much go down the list, kind of in the sense of, I've done a lot of dumb things in life. I wasn't a great child, but I also recognize I wasn't a horrible child. Like anybody else, I was very flawed, and I still am. And I still struggle with some of these things that we'll be talking about. This is why I have a heavy need of not just dealing with, getting therapy and help on how I deal with certain things. Once you get to know me, you'll start to, you'll understand more. I'm one of those people it might take you a while to figure out, because I'm just strange and awkward, I guess you could say. No, in my younger years, I dealt with, not just with drug addictions, some of which I still battle in the sense of, my primary addictions that I have is soda, cigarettes, and cannabis. And even though the cannabis is in utilization of a medical need, I'd much rather not. It's still in my mind, I'm still battling an addiction with it because I'm dealing with that constant conflict and internal battle of, I don't want to do this anymore. Yet, the other part of me is going, it's basically making excuses. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it. So I'm having a constant battle with myself. In the past, I dealt with addictions with amphetamines, other forms of speed, hallucinogenics. I never stepped into the heavy stuff like heroin and PCP and shit like that. And was never a fan of prescription drugs like pharmaceuticals and whatnot. It's pretty much a take as needed if it's a must. I didn't just deal with addictions. I've struggled with anger issues, a lot of it surrounding with how I cope with things and how I process things, and not being able to verbalize my thoughts in a manner that people can fully understand. Like, doing this is taking a lot of work on my mind to even just, yeah. I've battled depression, I've battled everything just like anybody else has. You know, I've stolen things growing up as a kid, and even as a teenager. I think the last time I stole anything was a Texas donut from the Ross in Camp. No, I take that back. Because I and a girlfriend at the time, yeah, between drugs being involved and everything like that, we made a bad decision and all. But we ended up returning everything, and because what it was we couldn't afford Christmas, and our kids didn't have much or anything like that, and in the sense of gifts, and yeah. So we made a dumb decision, and we learned from it pretty quickly. It's like I've always said, do something stupid, just own up to it, and just be honest. The other side, when the people involved are, generally reasonable, unless you're sitting there going, I just did it just because I was having fun, or like some other people, I just did it so I can be reminded what it was like to be human again. If you're not old enough to know where that term comes from, I'm sorry, and you're lucky, I guess, to a degree. But it's a movie star or a movie actress that said that. But I've been, yeah, I've struggled a lot, primarily with just like how with a lot of my anger issues and all that, and it's all based in communication and not really like being able to like speak in a way that I don't feel like people not only don't understand, but I feel like I'm talking to brick walls. Like my whole life I felt like I was talking to brick walls when it comes to people and everything. I'd be talking to them, and I mean, I get it, people can multitask. I do the same thing. When I talk to someone, I could be playing on a game on my phone, and sometimes it would look like I'm not listening, but I'm listening intensely to them while I basically keep my eyes and fingers busy, and I try to respond when needing to respond. Now, there are occasions there when I'm doing it and I need to take my attention away and put it completely into the conversation, because otherwise I will miss some things, and it's important that the other person knows that they felt heard and they're feeling like they're being listened to. And I know I have moments like that, and have had moments like that where it looks like or seems like I'm ignoring them, and then they have to ask if I was listening, and then they quickly go, well, what did I say and what was about? And it's like 9 times out of 10 I'm on point and on top of it, but I still have those moments, and I think we all have that. It's not just a male thing. I know women do it. But I've had to struggle with even parts of myself that, like, especially over the last 5-6 years, I was always really laid back, accepting of people, all that stuff. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter who you were, whatever. I still shied away from people that were dealing with certain types of addictions, mainly because of how my brother's passing, and having watched so many people fall to the addictions of especially amphetamines and stuff like that, and watch really good people, like, just in a matter of months, just become almost unrecognizable. And it's hard to watch, and it's hard to see. I mean, I saw that while working in dispensaries, where it's primarily these women. It's mostly it sounds sexist and it's not intended, but women generally over men. They tend to be better dressers than guys overall. They tend to, you still got guys out there that we joke, in the past we joked about it. He's a metrosexual, there's a guy that, goes out, gets his eyebrows plucked or waxed or whatever, and sits under a tanning booth, gets his fingernails and toenails done, and gets all purdy-fied, but likes women. Purely straight. We used to poke at my brother Mikey over that a little bit. Just for the fun of it. He's the Backstreet Boy type. But women in general are typically, cleaner, better dressers than guys. And I'm trying not to lose my spot because I got distracted there. But I'm gonna pause this thing and go back real quick so I can remember where I was going, because I just sidetracked myself thinking about my brother Mikey. I'll be right back. Okay, now I remember. But you can usually see a woman's style change really fast. It may not be overnight, but it's over a fairly short amount of time period when you can see that there's something changing. Like, as I was saying, when I was working in the dispensaries here, I was watching these, ladies that were coming in, and that originally they were kind of like your soccer mom types, that Sunday, driver with the minivan and all that. Well, they were fairly clean dressed, and obviously well mannered and all that. I mean, he looked at him like, oh, this lady's got like 10 kids, and goes, takes him to soccer practice every other day, and is the mom that's screaming from the sidelines, more so than dad. That type of thing. The gung-ho type mom, I guess. But in a matter of months, you start watching them look like, someone like myself, like they crawled out of their hamper. And they think it's a thing, and it's like, that's where part of my distaste where cannabis started coming in. I mean, I don't view it as being a bad thing. I actually really don't have anything against it. It's how we've attached an image to it. I view it more as a medicinal type thing. I don't view it as beyond that. Yet I realized that I've over a time period there, I had utilized too much, so I had cut back a lot. But I don't deal with any of the concentrates or synthetic type shit. I just know if I'm gonna admit, if I'm gonna make brownies, I'm gonna make brownies. I'm gonna do it the right way. But so I make tinctures, all that stuff. It's fun, but I kind of feel like people have attached that Spicoli image, Spicoli from Fast Times, and it seems like that you've got to be that kind of person to be utilizing that. It's like, I had that mind frame. I was pretty much like that 90s type hippie. But I was never big into alcohol. I had my moments. It's like when my younger son was living with, I'd drink on the weekends and all with one of my friends, but I wasn't the type that would get so plastered I couldn't walk or I couldn't talk or anything like that. I just never had a taste for getting like shit faced. I didn't like getting blasted. So I mean, there was a time there, I want to say about 2 weeks there, my buddy Mikey and I, his girlfriend was, snatching taking water bottles and snatching a little brandy from her dad's brandy collection type thing or whatever, and would bring it over, and It was like a week or two. I mean, we ended up getting just blasted. Yet they couldn't understand during that time period how it was that I was typically able to more or less walk straighter. I was one of those weird kids. I had pretty much, you know, like the, what is it, the Happy Gilmore type, you know, in the sense of I was going around mowing lawns there around the neighborhood here and there for extra money, so I'd cruise the lawnmower around the neighborhood like it was a car. And there's a day there I got, I was so dumb that when I was driving the mower, they're watching me drive this thing with a flat tire, and yet it was in a straight line. They're going, how the hell are you doing it? Is that a good thing? No, it's not actually a good thing. It's just, I've never really had a taste for this stuff. I don't mind drinking once in a while. There was a long period of time I was staying with my friend Nikki. We'd, you know, at home, she'd come over and drink at my house here and there. Do we sit there, get all violent and all this? No. We actually played a lot of Rock Band and Guitar Hero. A lot of times I'll become more of a quiet drinker than a loud one. But I can loosen up too and all that stuff. But do I need it to do it? Not really. I just need to be around the right person or right people. No, at most now I'll have some hot cocoa or whatever with it, or some spiked tea, and yeah, in 2 glasses I'll probably have the equivalent of maybe a shot or two, and that's over a couple glasses. I don't really like to have that much, but even then it's sparingly. No, my biggest vices right now that I deal with when it comes to addictions, like I said, soda, cigarettes, and cannabis. And cannabis not so much as I have an issue with soda and cigarettes. So that's why I'm trying. I'm not really a fan of this stuff, but I've got to do something. But I don't mind smoking pipe tobacco here and there. I actually don't mind it at all. It's just, yeah. You know, I've dealt with addictions and all that stuff, especially throughout my teen years and into my 20s. And I still have a few that I battle. You know, I still have some personality flaws that I've got to deal with, primarily around communication and how I cope with stressful situations, especially if I can't verbalize the things that I want to say. So it's like, you know, it feels a little uncomfortable, to be honest. So I mean, I recognize I got a lot of things I've got to correct in myself. You know, I've dealt with infidelities in my younger years and all that stuff. The idea that I'm finding out that I've been single for the last God knows how long, the entire time, it makes me have to rethink all my life. Was I out being a cheating son of a bitch? No. I had to learn my lessons on what that does in my younger years, in my 20s. It's not something you do in your 30s and 40s and all that shit. You should be well past that. By the time you get out of college, you should already be well aware of what you should and shouldn't be doing, especially by then. When it comes to relationships and family and stuff, you know, that type of stuff. Especially by then. That should already be instilled in us. But I understand people make mistakes. We all trip and fall, but when it gets to a point you're tripping and falling too much, you're not tripping and falling anymore. You're intentionally doing it. And it's like, sorry, the cars and everything, they're a little loud and it's making it hard for my, you know, kind of for me to think a little. I keep walking, but it's raining and there's not many trees between here and the next spot. I've dealt with, the whole issue of defying my parents, arguing with my parents, fighting with my parents, yelling at my parents. And a lot of that really didn't start happening until my teens, when I really started to rebel, and especially rebel against the abuse that I was dealing with. Did it make it okay? No, it really didn't. That's why I had lessons to learn in how I reacted in my behaviors. When it comes to dealing with relations with people who are married and all that stuff, well, as far as I knew, I dealt with that with one person in my 20s, and yeah, I had to learn from that too, and so did she. And the person who really, really got hurt, or the people, was her family. I had to learn a lot of things through not just my own idioms and bad choices. Oh man, these cars. I've had to... Oh, more. I've also learned a lot from my friends and families on their mistakes, and what you should and shouldn't do. You shouldn't be just learning from your own stupidity. You've got to be willing to learn from others, and sitting back and looking at someone going, "Oh, you did it? Well, then you're a hypocrite." Well, guess what? You're just not going to learn anything, are you? And you're going to keep doing the same stupid thing until you finally learn in a really big and bad way. Sure, you get people out there who are trying to give advice or some wisdom. That really, they probably are not in a place to give. It's like myself, this is how I put it. If you've been divorced more than like 2 or 3 times, you're probably not the person to give marital advice. You could probably give advice on, how to mess it up, and then people can take that and go, okay, don't do what that person did. But you really couldn't give advice on how to make it a perfect thing. So it's like, and as far as I'm concerned, I've not met anybody whose families have had, parents with perfect marriages. But I have seen families, and just like my own, where my parents, no matter how messed up, how difficult, how chaotic, the list goes on. No matter how many challenges that came to my parents' marriage, they still fought through it. At times I couldn't understand why my dad would stick around and all that stuff. And there's moments I couldn't understand why my mom would stick around. I think my parents had the same relationship that I was having with my ex. And they still have it, but because of karma and outcomes of behaviors, it's almost like, yeah. That's why I leave it in God's hands. It's like, I don't know how to explain a lot of things about it. But I'm glad the cars are slowing down at the moment, because I think a bus has got where the light was red. No, music-wise, I've always liked all kinds of music. Opera was one of those things that I never really got into. Do I think it's horrible sounding? No. I've heard some opera songs that I really like. I mean, who doesn't like, what is it? Flight of the Valkyries or whatever? That's a fun one. But it's a lot of it has to do with some of the pitch and the sound of how it hits my ear and stuff. Ears and my, makes my brain feel. Sorry, the noises, and I don't like the fact that I feel like I have to live life with my head on a swivel. No, I think not think. I ran probably about a good my entire teenage years into my 20s with probably people we probably shouldn't have. But I also learned that they weren't bad people. It was just the habits, the yeah, the habits, the experiences, all that stuff that they were dealing with were not good. And they were learning lessons just like I was having to learn. Excuse me. Now what they do with them, that's on each person. That's on each individual, you know. Some of them take those lessons and do really well with it and learn from it and correct it or whatever it is. But then they can take some of the other lessons and they might have to keep relearning them over and over and over again until it finally sinks in. Lord knows I'm one of those idiots that I've had to do that quite a bit with some things. And you know, there's not really anything wrong with it. It's just it's the process of trying to make sure that you're not out there to intent with like any intention in your heart or anything like that to really do harm. I mean, I know things happen, but you know, if you end up doing something that even if it's on accident, that does harm to someone, you sort of got to kind of deal with that action because obviously you made a choice in that situation that led to somebody getting harmed and possibly even yourself, which leads to both people having to depending on the scenario, because you can only do so much if somebody's running down the street, you say tire pops, you lose control, and you accidentally hit someone. There's what you call freaks of nature going on, or whatever you call it, like freak accident, whatever. That shit happens. It does happen. But as I said, if you're doing things with intent of harm behind it, you know, it's like you probably gotta really rethink it. Like what you're doing, it's not gonna get better, and things aren't gonna change if you keep doing it. Yeah. Trying to think of what else I've pretty much done, you know, because I for most part was almost too poor to be able to get myself into too much trouble. I've gotten to plenty, you know, vandalism, you know, taking a marker and writing on a wall and shit like that. People sit there and be like, "That's what the hell." But still, you're destroying somebody else's property. And that's not cool. I mean, I still remember when that situation happened. I ended up doing 40 hours of community service for writing on a couple bricks on the bathroom wall in one of the public bathrooms. And then one of my friends decided to graffiti all over the place. And we both got in trouble for it. I mean, when I got confronted about it, I was honest about it. I didn't lie about it. I guess I'm going to get walking. But, you know, actually, I'm going to come up over here because, I'm going to do an audience mode. But when I got done with the 40 hours of community service, he had not done really any of his. He had only knocked out a little bit. And oh man, I can't stand the noise right now. Oh hey, well, sorry, but I ended up doing a little extra community service for his part too. Was he angry about? No. See, the part that I took from that whole experience was I wasn't just viewing it as a punishment. I had an opportunity to not just kind of as a reminder to correct my behaviors, but in that process I ended up learning some new skills. I stepped away because, not just for this, but I didn't want this lady with her little dog walking by to feel awkward having some dude with a hoodie on standing there. But I don't think it's impossible for us to be able to learn from other people's mistakes and save ourselves the trouble and time to have to learn them ourselves the same way or in a similar fashion. I've done a lot of, crap things in my life, and some of these things over the last couple of years, I've very much have publicly humiliated myself and have been very open about some of the things that I've done and even gotten in trouble with. That still bothers me, because there's certain aspects of myself that never existed before the last few years. And back off this way so that, because the lady's coming back again. But I just don't see. I understand that the difficulties of being able to, basically tell people, look, I'm screwed up. I've made bad choices in life that I've had to live with. I've done plenty of stupid things in life that I've had to live with. Yet at the same time, instead of taking those bad experiences, the experiences from even my own bad choices, from the abuses that I've dealt with to the abuses that I've done to myself, from the addictions and all, and then allowing myself to sort of fall into the habits of making bad choices, trying to basically be a rebellious teenager from the abuse that I was dealing with at home. So instead of abusing someone else, I was abusing myself. And so from all of that, to abusing myself and to ending up in one bad relationship after another. And am I going to put that all on the woman? No. I have my parts in it too. That's why I don't have any hatred towards any of them, and why a lot of times with my different exes and all, anytime that we've crossed paths or exchanged words, besides my current, I'm not even sure I can call her an ex. It's always been friendly, I've been able to communicate with them without an issue, like friends. It's just, obviously, I've done things out of wedlock, because otherwise I wouldn't have had children as a teenager, as a teen parent. And it took me a little bit to really grow up at the moment I was given a chance, because I was never given a chance. Other than there in the beginning with my older son, until I realized, it's like, look, it wasn't about not wanting to be a parent, it was about not wanting to ruin her life more. And needing us to be able to work together as co-parents, as friends, and to make it work for him. But instead, he just sort of became a power tool for her and her family to sort of punish and control, and that affected him as well. It didn't just affect our relationship, and it wasn't just some serious parental alienation going on. But I don't blame him, and I don't blame him for how he's had to battle his demons too, and how he's had to react to things and deal with things. I don't blame him. There's things that he's got to be accountable for. I don't blame him for a lot of things. I really don't. See, I kind of had to learn the hard way of why you don't do certain things, yet I also recognize, too, that if I hadn't done certain things, I more than likely would have never had kids in my life. Because knowing who I am now and all that, especially after everything that's gone on with my current, I don't even know what to call that right now. Might as well just acknowledge it as this last relationship, and then every other. I just feel like, no, honestly, I don't feel good now. And the more of this type of stuff that happens, the more flawed that I feel. I feel like I'm just not really good enough for anybody. In fact, my health has been neglected and everything because I just can't afford that stuff. Just everything that has happened, yeah. But I do take responsibility for the things that I've done in life, and I just want people to understand that. I'm very much, if you want to call me a Christian, then I'm more of a cross. When people hear Christian spiritualist, they kind of make fun of it. That type of, it's the only thing I can understand to kind of describe myself. But I'm definitely a vulgar, flawed Christian. You're going to hear me cuss. I cuss. I don't curse. But I also want people to understand that when you make certain choices in life, you're going to be met with karma in various forms and ways, which is also a lesson built into it. And you have to pay for that, and you have to acknowledge that, and it's, as long as you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to keep dealing with the same type of karma. You're going to still keep dealing with the same lesson and keep going through that. And because, well, when I love someone, I love them very deeply. I love them, I guess you call it, I love them hard. But for me, I put all of myself into basically that person, that relationship. Do I want them to change? No. I just want them to be happy and to be them, because that's why I fell in love with him. Of course, there's some people, I'll just say there's one person that I just don't know how, all it took was just to hear that voice, like, holy shit. I'm still embarrassed and uncomfortable about some things that are going on, about talking about certain things. It's just, I think I just think a lot of people, when they view some of my vids, I think of myself as just a victim. And it's like, no. We're all, when it comes down to it, in the sense of not just, the blatant, oh, we're flawed. We're all victims, and we've all been abusers at some point or another, whether we're abusing somebody else or ourselves. Even if it's in just the slightest, most passive-aggressive way. We've all been guilty of doing something in that sense, and if we don't pay attention to those types of things, it makes it hard for us to change those things. And it's like, even myself, it's like the amount of shit that I went through, even though I stood up, been defending myself, speaking out against what I've been dealing with, and fighting against it. Does it make me feel good that I'm having to do that? No. I don't even really want to. I'd rather still be pretty much enjoying, in a sense, my quiet life to myself, and, well, I had hoped my relationship, but I didn't realize I was, Do I not like people or anything? No, I have nothing to do with that. I struggle to communicate with other people. And because I'm always, I rub people the wrong way and taken the wrong way, it makes it harder for me to want to be around others, because I just don't want to do that. The people that were around me in life and everything that have passed on were pretty much all I've got. Others have alienated, isolated, I lost everything through the abuse that I've been dealing with the last few years. The way I reacted to various scenarios over the last few years, like, where I hit my breaking points, they weren't healthy. I tried everything I could. I mean, yeah, all you had to do is go through the videos and all that, and I just don't want to go over it. I don't want to rehash everything. It's just, I recognize that the things I went through from that person, the things I went through from my parents, my brother, friends, classmates, co-workers, it doesn't matter how much I got abused by the various ones and the way I was treated horribly. I don't view it as giving me the reason to go out and do it to someone else, and that's why I choose not to. It's just I also know when I need to speak up. And I tend to be patient for the most part. I generally am a pretty damn patient person. But I don't deal with the bullshit. I don't have patience for bullshit. And when people are pulling bullshit and they're bullshitting me, I'll call out the bullshitter because I know what it is to be a bullshitter at times. I can bullshit with you too. I have this habit, what people don't realize is, if you're doing something to me, I'll reflect it back to you within limits. I will treat you how you treat me, and I will let you see what I let you see yourself. And a lot of people don't like that. That's how I had to deal with this, my last person, especially for this last relationship. With what I was going through and all that, I had to reflect back some of their shit over the last few months. And I know they didn't like it. It's like, yeah, I just was doing it within limit because I don't believe in doing what they were doing. You don't abandon people like that. You don't disregard people like that. You don't stonewall and just make them feel like they're just alone all the time. And even though you're sitting right next to them, you know, there's just a whole mix of things that I really can't mesh into this, and I probably already talked over an hour. So, since this has got chopped up. But I'm going to stop here. Again, people got to realize I don't view myself as being perfect or anything like that. I'm extremely flawed. I don't know how many times this vase has been dropped on the floor and glued back together. Thanks for watching. Later.